So the character is supposed to be falling in the scene, and it's supposed to be quite dramatic and dynamic.
I hate my ambitious past self who did the storyboards. Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Visual Storytelling. In the last episode we talked about storyboards, and if you haven't seen the video, you should check it out because it will be the basis for the next step, drawing the actual manga pages, which we will be talking about in this video. So drawing the manga pages is pretty straightforward and there is no one right way to do it. But I would say that skill-wise it is the hardest step. This is where you will have to apply all your knowledge about anatomy, facial expressions, perspective, backgrounds in general, and so on. So all the hours of practicing you have spent in your life will be flowing into this. But also this will be the best practice you can get, kinda, because you will be forced to have to draw different facial expressions, different perspectives, just, different poses that you are not used to. Some artists do warm-up sketches before they start drawing, or they do some studies, but I personally feel like I will just lose some energy if I add another step before doing the actual work, so I just jump right into it. And each day will be different anyways. Some days you feel like you made a lot of progress, and some other days you feel like you can do basic stuff anymore. So yeah, whatever you prefer, whether you do some practice beforehand or you jump into it, just see where your journey takes you. Here is the material you can use. If you draw traditionally, you will need some paper, a pencil, maybe a blue lead pencil, rulers, French curves, even though I mostly use them when I ink and just wing it when I draw the pages with pencil. An eraser, lots of reference. And if you draw digitally, then you will probably need a PC, a tablet, and a drawing program. When I first wrote the script for this episode, I was still doing everything mostly traditionally. But by the time of recording, actually, I started doing my manga pages fully digitally, even the storyboard. So I guess I will explain both the traditional and the digital processes. So first I will be explaining the traditional way, and then I will go over to the digital. If you are not interested in the traditional way, you can skip to the digital way. I will blend in here the timestamp for when I start about talking digitally. Even though I still would suggest you to watch the traditional stuff because, I don't know, like some things still apply to the digital process. So yeah. I do not use manga paper, but this brand instead. It's still not exactly cheap, but a lot cheaper than Delita manga paper. At least in Germany, Delita manga paper costs a fortune. And just like manga paper, when you ink, you can use a quill, and the pen nib won't get caught in the paper, as the surface is really smooth. This paper is E3 size, but I make markings and actually use the B4 format, as it's not quite as small as A4, where it's a lot harder to draw little details, but it's also not as huge as A3, so it is a little bit quicker to draw on B4. But feel free to use whatever format you prefer. I guess A4 is a little bit easier in the beginning, and also like if you buy A3 paper, you can just cut each piece of paper into two, and then you have a lot more pages. So it's a money save hack. So first I measure the page and mark in the margins. Depending on the format, the margins are different and there are no universal measurements. So here are some examples. As I mentioned in the storyboards episode, you cannot place any text or any important content into these margins, as they will be later cut and really close to the border. So worst case, some text or important parts of your drawing will be cut off, and in the best case it will disrupt the reading flow of the story. I take out the storyboards that I finished in the previous step and start sketching in the panel lines and the actual drawings. With the storyboard already done, I don't have to think about what the page is gonna look like and what petals are gonna show what. I don't have to follow it to the T. Changes are fine. But having them really helps me to just start drawing without having to think about the composition of the page. This is the time when you start hating your overly ambitious past self.
So here I am seeing I'm supposed to rather draw a kick, but something like this apparently, and I should just Google some boxing poses. Great planning!
And there are some other challenges too. Even though my storyboard is really messy and ugly, sometimes those really loose sketches kinda end up looking more expressive than the clean drawing. So yeah, getting the kind of emotion across in the clean drawing isn't always easy. It's, I guess, because you draw pretty loosely when you do the storyboard, you don't think too much, while you use your brain excessively when you draw the pages. So yeah, some drawings end up looking much more stiff than the rough sketches. But there are also times when the expressions and poses in the storyboards don't work anymore, so I change them accordingly when I draw the actual pages. This is why it's important to be flexible at this stage. We want to have the best possible result. I draw the basic shapes with a blue lead pencil first. I use it for the characters and the background. It helps me to distinguish later what lines to ink and what lines are just, well, guidelines. With the blue pencil I mostly try to get the anatomy right and the basic concept. No need to draw in the clothes and all the details yet. A really good tip I received at some point in my life is to not hesitate to draw outside of the panel. Actually, I would suggest you have to do it. If you don't, sometimes you end up messing up the proportions. By drawing the whole head here, you can see where the ear is supposed to be. This way you won't draw it too small or in the wrong position. Another tip that might sound weird but is really helpful is to look at your page from a distance from time to time. When we draw, we see the page from a very close distance, so sometimes it's difficult to see any kind of wrong proportions or distortions. Looking at the picture from a distance makes you actually notice those distortions. Also, flipping the drawing and holding it against the light helps you to see whether the faces are not symmetrical. Any experienced artist will tell you how much this technique helps. Our brains are weird and sometimes we need to change the perspective and then suddenly we see things with a different eye. Of course, if you draw digitally, those things are a little bit easier to do. Just flip the page and digitally you just zoom out. It's a little bit easier to keep track of those things. There is less physical work involved, I guess. But again, any kind of extra movement you can get while drawing is good for you. If you draw on paper, you might also just use your phone and take a picture, and just to see it in smaller format also just helps you to see mistakes. I don't know what it is, it's just I don't see it on paper. Once I take a picture on my phone, okay, now I see it. It's super weird. I don't know. Brains. Another thing I wished I started using earlier are references, and there is no better time than now to use them. Do not shy away from it. I used to think that an artist is supposed to be able to draw everything from the imagination, but even professional artists use reference. It is actually part of being a professional. What matters in your comic is that the finished page looks as good as you can get it with your current skill level. And using reference just pumps up the quality of your pages by a lot. Here's a comparison of a pose I first drew without and then with the reference. First drawing is not exactly wrong, but the second one is just a lot more detailed and dynamic and just anatomically more correct.
Use whatever you have at hand, the internet, body dolls, even your own body. 90% of pictures of myself on my phone are reference photos.
Also, it would be advisable to use an inclined desk or something of that sort, because first, it does protect your back, and second, it does help to keep distortions to a minimum as well. I actually have one, but I don't use it because I don't have enough space on my desk. My dad made one for me and it's great, but yeah, I'm waiting to save enough money to buy a bigger desk. While watching or listening to anything while I do the storyboards, it's simply impossible for me, as I need to concentrate really hard and anything can just distract me. But when I draw the manga pages, this is the time when I can finally turn on a podcast or any kind of series that I have seen before, where I don't have to constantly look at the screen to see what is going on. This makes the whole process a lot more relaxing and just like helps me, just stick to it for a bit longer than just like 1 hour or something. But even then, sometimes the page is so challenging, I have to literally turn off like podcasts or anything I'm listening to, because I have to concentrate so hard. In those times, like, I can maybe listen to some calm music without any lyrics. That's it. I don't know, do you experience the same? Tell me about it in the comment section below. I would like to listen whether I'm weird or whether there are other people who feel the same. Anyways, at this stage, just use whatever helps you concentrating, whether it's music, series, or whatever. But nothing that would distract you from drawing. Find the balance. Critical Role or Ultraverse podcasts are some of my favorite things to listen to while I draw. You can draw each page and then ink, tone, and letter it straight away, so you are done page by page. Or you can first draw all the pages with pencil and then ink them. I do the second one because, let's say you drew 20 pages and then you go back to the first page to ink it. By the time distance you have won, meanwhile, you can see certain mistakes you did, so you can correct them before you ink the actual drawings. The hard part about it is that it can be a little bit monotonous and a little bit boring, and then let's say you have one step in between that you find especially challenging, like for example, I really don't like to do the screen tones. You have to do them more at once, while if you draw, ink, tone and letter, it brings a little bit of variation and change into your process, so it doesn't get boring or strenuous. So just do whatever works best for you, whatever makes you finish the project, At this step, I already draw the speech bubbles and ink them later straight away. My prime reason for it is that I don't want to have to draw a background where there's gonna be a speech bubble anyways. But I think if you work with a publisher, then the speech bubbles are added later on digitally. As far as I know, but don't take my word on it, I haven't worked with a publisher yet. Now onto the digital drawing. So far I have only done one chapter digitally and I'm not even fully done. But I hope the experience I gained so far will be kind of beneficial to you. But yeah, I'm still learning myself. Remember all those points I mentioned before, like flipping the page and zooming out of the picture to see the proportions better? Yeah, this is a lot easier when you do it digitally. And this is the reason why I switched. Well, sometimes I would see a mistake, but it's not big enough for me to redo the whole drawing. So I would say, okay, I will either try to fix it later when I scan in the pages, or I just let it be. But digitally, you can actually improve on it a lot easier. Sometimes it's just the hand is a little bit too big, and then you just size it down a little bit. Or the character should be a little bit more to the left, so you can just move the character, only the character, a little bit to the left. You don't have to redraw the whole character, just 5 millimeters to the left, which helps a lot. But there's the downsides to it too, because then you might keep going and keep changing things, when sometimes it's better to just stop and accept the page at the level it is, because you have to be done. So yeah, pro and contra as usual. Just as with traditionally drawn pages, it's important not to place any important content of your story into the margins. Clip Studio has an option where it creates a page for you with the margins already marked. Also, you can have your whole manuscript as one file where you pick the pages in Clip Studio. But I ignore all that. I create the page in the size I need for the print and mark the main area red and draw the panels first. The rest is kinda self-explanatory. You draw, you erase or change things. You can use different colors for different figures and backgrounds. I also first do the rough shapes and then fill in the details, just with traditional drawings. And I also use reference, just like with traditional drawing. As I said before, I'm still figuring things out, so I'm not sure how much I can actually teach you, but I can recommend Clip Studio's own videos on that. Yeah, the videos are really beginner friendly, and I myself use them as well when I just started learning how to draw digitally. So yeah, they are great, and you can find the link for the playlist in the description box. Thank you, Clip Studio, for providing lots of learning materials. This video is not sponsored by Clip Studio. Obviously, I just really like the program. So, as per usual, you are free to try out things and adjust your process according to your liking. I am not a fan of strict guidelines, so whatever leads to the best results is the way to go. So, no matter whether you choose drawing traditionally, digitally, or a mix of both, what matters is that you enjoy the process and that you're as happy with the results as you can be. And I know how hard it can be to be happy with your own drawings. I mean, as artists, we are usually our worst critics and we see all the mistakes and we hate them. But sometimes perfectionism can be your worst enemy. And, getting past that is also important. It's okay to forgive yourself for mistakes. It's okay not to be perfect. Remember that. But a little bit of a perfectionism is kind of important as well, because it kind of pushes you towards self-improvement. So just drawing digitally kind of gave me a little bit of perfectionism that I was missing before. And I think it was good for me. I'm still nowhere close to being a perfectionist, and I will never be. But I am a little bit more, at least I'm trying a little bit harder now than I used to. Phew, guys, we survived 2020. And 2021 is off to a great start. Yeah, this year won't be easy, but we have to persevere and we have to stick together and make it as bearable as possible for us. As for New Year's resolutions, I basically have only one, and that is uploading one YouTube video a month. This is the first one, so the easiest. I'll try to do my best and we'll see how it goes. Also this year I will finally publish the second volume of my manga, Another Me. Feel free to follow me on my social media for more updates. In the next video we will be talking about my favorite step of creating the manga pages, inking. Until then, follow, subscribe and press the notification bell so that you won't miss the next video. And most importantly, stay safe and take care of yourself and your loved ones. I'll see you in the next video. Bye!